I never imagined that I would be humiliated by my own sister at her engagement party. Around the table, guests smiled warmly, celebrating this special day. Yet, as if taking pleasure in the moment, my sister casually announced in front of everyone that I was just a small administrator at a hospital. People chuckled. They exchanged glances. But despite her words, I tried to remain calm, just as I always had. Then her fiancé turned toward me, studying my face as if he had seen me somewhere before. "So, what do you actually do?" he asked. I didn't explain. I only said one word, and in that quiet, measured tone, that single word changed the way everyone, my family included, looked at me forever. My name is Linda. I am calm, kind to everyone, dedicated to my work. But my sister, Katerina, delights in mocking others, criticizing everything, always craving attention, and somehow managing to get it. My mission in life had always been clear: to stand at the forefront of people's health, a real healer. On important days, Thanksgiving, birthday lunches, even simple phone calls with relatives I hadn't seen in years, people would always ask with a laugh, "Still working as an administrator?" And I would nod quietly. Yes, still there. And the conversation would move on. They didn't know that over the years I had learned to be invisible, not out of shame, but because every time I tried to explain my achievements, I was met with indifferent, vacant stares. Early on, I realized that my success made some people uncomfortable, especially Katerina. So I softened my words, hid the sharp edges of my accomplishments, presented only a small, inconsequential version of myself. At home, it was always the same. Katerina spoke, and everyone listened intently. Our parents hung on her every word, fascinated by her work, her plans, her ideas. When I spoke, people were distracted, checking their phones or flipping through channels on the TV. It was a habit, one that was hard for them to break. The only person who saw me differently was my cousin, Maria. She knew the late nights, how I carried myself, the strange hours my phone would ring. Even when I said nothing, she knew the truth. Sometimes she would squeeze my hand under the table, a quiet reminder that I wasn't invisible everywhere. I told myself I didn't need their approval. Their opinions didn't matter to me. Yet every time Katerina laughed at my hospital job, something inside me tightened. I didn't feel anger, at least not in the usual sense, but it was a familiar, sharp sting. That day, I had planned to arrive early at the engagement. I would help where needed, smile when introduced, and then quietly leave, unnoticed. I expected nothing of interest from this gathering, no respect, no acknowledgement. After all, it was Katerina's day. In events like this, she would do everything she could to corner me, to humiliate me in front of everyone, and she almost always succeeded. That day, as was my habit, I arrived early at the engagement. I had just stepped inside when my mother handed me a stack of napkins and said, "Set these on the tables." Then she turned and walked away. No greeting, no glance, nothing. By the time the guests began arriving, I had already refilled the ice twice and wiped down the counters, untouched and pristine. I told myself it was fine. I was used to this role, helpful, quiet, and out of the way. Then Katerina arrived. Stepping out of the car, she was radiant, impossible to ignore. People immediately gathered around her. Compliments floated through the air, cameras flashed. Her fiancé, Robert, followed quietly, smiling as if he needed no effort to draw attention in the room. He shook hands, thanked people, and mostly listened. At first, he barely noticed me. Katerina went on to extol her fiancé's every success: impressive earnings, high salary, a flourishing career. My parents smiled, as if proud to have played a part. I stood at the edge of the crowd, without champagne, watching the same familiar scene I had witnessed countless times in my life. Then Katerina noticed me. "Come over here," she said, waving her hand as if she had just remembered. She draped her arm over my shoulder, smiling broadly. "This is Linda. She works at the hospital." A few people nodded politely, showing mild interest. "She's not a doctor, just an administrator," Katerina added, laughing. "She keeps things in order, answers the phones, follows instructions." Someone smiled. Another nodded, as if everything had been explained. A familiar warmth spread through my chest. My old instinct kicked in. Stay quiet, soften it, let it pass. But Robert did not smile. He watched me closely. His smile faded slightly, his eyes scanning my face, searching for inconsistencies. I caught that brief moment of hesitation, a pause that didn't belong. Dinner was announced, and we moved to the table. I sat at the end, precisely where I was expected. Toasts were made, yet Katerina absorbed every word, then lifted her glass again. "Some people manage important work," she said, glancing at Robert. "And some answer phones," she added, looking at me. Then Robert turned toward me. "Wait a minute," he said slowly. "Katerina, what do you actually do at the hospital?" The room fell silent. Every eye turned to me. There was no room left for lies. I didn't answer immediately. My hands gripped the glass in front of me. Memories rushed in. Helping at the table during holidays, the way my work was always minimized at family gatherings, the times I stayed silent to spare my parents' disappointment, the nights I worked alone at home. I knew none of these would ever be acknowledged here. At that moment, I realized that by staying silent, I hadn't been protecting anyone else. I had been protecting the small, diminished version of myself that they were comfortable seeing. Katerina smiled. My mother averted her gaze. My father hesitated. Robert, however, watched me calmly. My old instinct whispered, "Move on." But another feeling rose, calm and clear. No anger, just truth. If I spoke, I would remain. If I stayed silent, I would vanish. This wasn't about embarrassing anyone. It was about refusing to disappear. I sat up straight, removed my hand from the glass, and in a steady, clear voice that everyone could hear, I looked at Robert, then my parents, and said, "Doctor." Instantly, everything changed. Conversation stopped. Forks hovered mid-air. Everyone froze. My mother's face went pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. My father blinked, carefully setting his glass down. Katerina laughed, a dry, sharp sound. "Good heavens," she said, waving her hand. "How amusing." I didn't look at her. My eyes stayed on Robert. He didn't laugh. He didn't move. And then I saw it on his face. Not anger. Recognition. Slowly he leaned back, as if piecing together fragments from memory. "Doctor," he said quietly. Then he paused. "Linda Harper," he added, "from the clinic downtown." Silence fell over the room. "You treated me last year," Robert said, "after the car accident." A heavy silence fell over the room. Katerina's laugh faltered, cut short. "What are you talking about?" she snapped. "She's just an administrator, answers phones. You're mistaken." Robert didn't look at her. "I know what an administrator is," he said calmly. "I also know what a doctor looks like." Then he looked at me. I remember those days very clearly. At last my father spoke. "You're a doctor?" he asked, disbelief in his voice. "Since when?" "For 3 years," I replied quietly. My mother shook her head, as if the words still didn't carry meaning for her. "But you said you just helped people," she murmured. "That's true," I said. "At first, no one asked." And in that moment, they began to understand. Slowly, painfully. The story they had believed for years had been convenient, not truthful. It had changed nothing, harmed no one. Katerina slid her chair back slightly, her eyes scanning the room. "This is ridiculous," she said. "You've convinced everyone you're just an administrator. Who would do that?" For the first time, I looked her in the eyes. "I didn't lie," I said. "I just didn't correct you." Her face flushed red. "You did this on purpose," she shouted. "You waited to humiliate me at my engagement." I shook my head. You humiliated yourself. You asked the question. I answered. Then Katerina turned to Robert. You knew. She was a doctor and you didn't tell me. Robert's voice was calm. You never told anyone Linda Harper was your sister, never mentioned her last name. You didn't even let her speak. Those words were more powerful than anything I could have said. Silence fell over the table. My uncle lowered his head, staring at his hands. My grandmother, across the table, lightly squeezed my wrist as if she had been waiting for this moment for years. I always knew, she said softly. You were different. Katerina suddenly stood, her chair scraping against the stone floor, breaking the silence. This is my night, she said, her voice trembling. You ruined it. You always do this. You always manage to steal the attention. I did not move. I stayed silent until you mocked me, I said evenly, until you made me look ridiculous in front of your fiancé and our family. This was no accident. It was your choice. She wanted to speak but stopped. For the first time, she had no words. Robert slowly stood. Katerina, he said carefully, don't. You should be on my side. I am on the side of truth, I said. I don't understand how you allowed yourself to speak about your sister like that. And in that moment, everything shattered, not with noise, not with an explosion, but completely and irrevocably changed. Katerina looked around the table and realized the attention had shifted. The focus she always carried was no longer hers. No one laughed. No one defended her. My parents froze, caught between the girl they had praised and the one they had never truly seen. Incredible, she whispered. Do you think you're better than me now? I didn't nod. No, I just stopped making myself small. She looked at me for a moment. Behind her anger, there was a raw, frightened expression. Then she turned and walked inside, the click of her heels punctuating the air like a period at the end of a sentence. Robert hesitated. I need to talk to her, he said quietly, his eyes a mixture of conflict and respect. I nodded. After they left, the table remained in silence. The champagne was warm, the plates untouched. Finally, my mother reached for my hand. Why didn't you tell us? She asked, her voice small and gentle. I didn't pull back. Every time I had tried to make myself seen, I said, You weren't looking. No one protested. In that quiet, a strange feeling settled within me. Not triumph, just relief. I had laid down a burden I had carried for years, and there was no need to pick it back up. The next day, my phone was quiet. No fear, no replaying the night in my mind, just sunlight through the window and the steady hum of the city. Then the messages began. Missed calls, long texts, short but sincere apologies. Suddenly, relatives wanted to reconnect. My parents had sent 2 voice notes, but I didn't listen to either. Around midday, there was a knock at the door. Robert, sleep-deprived but thoughtful, tired-looking. We sat at opposite ends of the couch. He offered no excuses, made no defenses. I can't ignore it now, he said quietly, how they spoke to you, and how everyone allowed it. I nodded. No words were needed. I don't yet know what this means for us, he admitted, but I can't pretend I didn't see it. When he left, the apartment felt lighter, not empty, but honest, comfortable. A few days later, Katerina unexpectedly showed up at my door. No makeup, her hair simply tied back, a version of her I had never seen at family gatherings, more sincere, more natural. We didn't hug, we didn't argue. Everything was quiet but serious. I finally understand that I was afraid of being simple, of being second, she said softly. I believed her. I'm not here to compete, I said, never have been. She nodded slowly as if hearing it for the first time. We didn't suddenly grow close, and nothing magically fixed overnight. But something had shifted. Everything felt different, lighter, yet decisive. My parents began asking questions again, and this time I listened more carefully than ever, even with a hint of impatience in their curiosity. Maria smiled at me across the lunch table, and I felt an odd calm settle inside. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. I realized that now my words alone were enough. No one's approval mattered. I had once equated staying quiet with kindness and respect. I had been wrong. Silence was never about protecting anyone. It only taught people how small and withdrawn I could be. The truth is, no one owes it to anyone to present the small, concealed version of themselves just to maintain peace. If you have hidden yourself for years, disguised your achievements, and stayed in the background to make others comfortable, know this: you are not alone and you don't have to do it anymore. You have the right to show your strength, your presence, your voice.